a need for being more action-based and not just going to, the change, like one of us mentioned, like going to protest and reposting things versus really giving yourself action items of these are the things that I'm going to commit myself to do, whether it's just for economic disparity or standing up for what it is you believe in. So it's kind of leaving space to, we spoke about also like meeting people where they're at, but also in tandem, you're also like in full pursuit now. I think everybody's kind of like, as tired as we are, we're all kind of like armored up and saying we need to continue on, whether people are conservative or not with your program. We're still developing what our program is. So that was the highlight of our group. We had a great time.
Beautiful. I like, that's the armored up group. That's very good. Okay, Shaw.
Hi guys. So yeah, we had a great group as well, a mix of different cultures. And we started off by saying that, in this time due to COVID and everything, a lot of things have come into light. And some people understand that there are certain things that they can't let go of anymore. And even when you disagree with people, at times you have to cut them off because it's not good for your own sanity, and you want to uphold your strict values. And this is something that one of the group members shared with us. And they also said that it's very tough to communicate with people from different cultures and different generations, even in our own family sometimes, our elders. So there are certain gaps, certain things that we have to work on. And our second member said that being Mexican American and from a Spanish background, they realized, when they were younger, they said that there were times they used to sit in the back of the classroom. They were in an all, white school, and they used to sit in the back. And that's something I didn't know. I had no idea about this, but this has happened at times. And then they realized that, they have to assimilate themselves into the larger culture. And even with COVID, you have to decide who do you want to deal with, in your family, in your friend circle. And there's also assumption with minorities that just because we put our families first, that we're more susceptible to getting COVID, or like there's COVID in their communities. So people realize that, and it's also comes down to some people, they want to cut people out if these people are pushing their values onto them instead of respecting their values, and that's a big part of it, and that's understandable. And then we had a scientist in our group who suggested, we looked at it in a big picture, and they suggested this whole thing has been individualism versus community, where something as simple as putting on a mask, individuals, they don't want to do it. Instead of thinking that, hey, let's do something to help others, there's a me first mentality. And it needs to change from being an individual to more of a community mentality, because now we're being faced with external issues, and this is a time to come together. Whether it's, there's so many different things, whether it's white versus black, whether it's, China versus America, all these things will be put aside, and we all need to come together. And what happens is people aren't even sure anymore if they know each other. We're going through such difficult conflicts. And, to end everything, I truly, there's so many things. There's a truth. We don't know what's true or false anymore. There's false information, even given to us by our politicians, right? Our leaders. And there's also crowds of fanatics out there. And it's disturbing to us to see this. So I think, lastly, it's important that we share our different values with one another. We're all having a tough time trying to meet in the middle right now. But the important thing right now is that at least we're having these conversations, and it's okay to cut people off. It's okay to continue to have these conversations if you're able to. And it's tough because, we recently just went through this a couple of months ago, and we're still feeling so passionate about it. But I think we have to talk about our values if we are able to. And hopefully there comes a time where we can put our emotions to the side and we can all come together. And I think that's when change is going to happen. And hopefully we can bridge the gap when we are all ready. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Jan?
Thank you, Marie. It was a wonderful group that I was in with 3 other people. It was a multinational, multi-generational, multiracial group that went deep and vulnerable really fast, which is always such a beautiful thing to see and to witness. I was much more of a witness in this group than an active participant, but that was my way of actively participating. And the gift for me personally was that, and the group doesn't know this, yesterday I was working with someone that I've worked with for years at my not-for-profit organization who had, who I thought we were on the same page, and announced that she would never vote for Biden-Harris because she really parts ways with them around the whole BLM thing. And I gasped, and I could not go there. There wasn't time to start to engage with her on this, but it has been haunting me for 24 hours. And what came out in the group, I share that with you because the group restores my hope at a time when I'm feeling low in hope today. So I just, a shout out to the 3 people in my group for that. They each talked about their own personal experience with, as COVID was happening and as George Floyd and events of the BLM that re-energized the BLM movement were happening. Each person described their own awakening to the people in their lives and who shared their values and who did not. And there were soulful expressions of whether it was in their personal life or their adult children's lives, that and their own, that they've experienced, in some ways they've experienced racism anew, that by being isolated and in COVID and then stepping back into the world, they were confronted again with the fact that the color of their skin mattered more out there than it did here. And the pain of these times, and one person spoke very much about the importance of their life as in protest, and another person spoke as someone who was active in the civil rights movement and who leads social dialogue, anti-racist dialogues in formal groups, and spoke about feeling disheartened that we were back at it again, and also spoke of growth. One person had a really great analogy. I use another bodily analogy, but I loved hers. I feel like sharing it because it's pretty vivid, so brace yourself. But one person in the group said they feel like, you know how when you feel like you're gonna vomit and you're trying to hold it in and then you just can't anymore. And she feels that there's, as a society, we're purging, this is coming out. That led to a discussion of people feel that the role of the presidency and the government has been defiled. That leadership, there's a hope that leadership will come out of the protests, and the agitators was a word that was used, and that future leadership will be there. And then we moved into, we took the last part of the second questions, and there was a passionate plea for people to listen, and to listen deeply and openly, which I think Nalini and her company have created for us here. And I think Melanie and her company have created for us here. And that it's not listening, it's listening. There was a plea to be heard and to be understood. And that people are so hungry for that. And
Wonderful. Yeah.
that's what I heard.
Good. Terrific. Thank you. David.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Marie. We had a terrific group, really nicely engaged, and where Jan left off, I think, is a good segue to talk a little bit about our group. I don't think we discovered any real answers, but I can say that at the end of the conversation and since then, I've been thinking while listening to everyone else, I've been thinking in so deeply about the meaning of the things that we discussed. If I had to put a headline on the topics that each of the individuals in our group spoke about, I would say the headline is around a genuine interest in understanding, where especially we in America, where our behaviors since COVID started, especially where those behaviors may be driven by values that may be vastly different from most of us here tonight, from what we've been able to ascertain. Each person was able to share, just trying to understand. There's one person who's from Canada and here in the United States in New York City experiencing people who refuse to wear masks, people who just outwardly refuse to comply with safety rules. What's very interesting is we began to make linkages between the types of behavior of, let's say, a Trump supporter and someone who steadfastly believes that they have a right to their gun, someone who steadfastly believes that they have a right to what's theirs. And from there, we kind of explored the values that might be driving that type of belief or behavior. And that brought us to our uniquely capitalist society and how values either do or don't drive the drive for money at all cost in our society. And I don't think we really came to any answers, but the exploration of it left me, who I'm a professor of leadership, and the course that I teach is values-based leadership. So understanding where values drive decision-making, where values drive behavior, and understanding humans based on those values, and then trying to link it to understanding behavior out there right now that has a deep and lasting impact on all of us. That's what I came away from. The last thing I would say is one of our participants brought up the idea that we have algorithms now that put the reinforcement of our values in front of us and push away the allowing opposing values or different values in. The way we consume our news, the way we consume any kind of content, it almost is creating a barrier between our understanding of values from other people. And so I'm walking away thinking about that and deeply appreciating the space to explore that. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Emily, is Emily one of the facilitators?
I think I'm your last facilitator.
Oh, you're the last one. And then me. So it's you. You're on.
Hi, everyone. My group covered a very broad range of topics, so I'm just going to quickly go through them because many ideas have already been shared. Something that was really sad and disheartening to hear from two of our breakout group members who happen to be East Asian American females was the fear that started early on, the fear to walk a dog, the fear to go out to a store, the fear that they felt they had to be ready and equip themselves before they walked out the door to have a response in the event they got questioned, as one did, just while throwing her trash out. And that really, that never happened before in their lives, and it was really, really sad for them to have this fear that was a very real fear, and the fear of getting punched in the face is one of them. Shared that her friend had that experience while going to a mall. So we moved from that onto a discussion of the Asian American model minority status and how tenuous that is. That it rests so delicately on perhaps everything ranging from doing well in school as a stereotype, or not really getting into trouble as a stereotype. But as much as we may have benefited from that label, it was astonishing how quickly, how overnight that switch could get flipped the other way. And suddenly we have hate and hateful rhetoric, and also hateful violence, fueled by this kung flu awful term, and how mass generalizations were made against people that they knew already, people that were already in community with one another. And suddenly they were perceived as outsiders, or perceived as other, perceived as purveyors of a virus, and how hurtful that was. We went on to discuss values and discussions around values, whether it happens in the workplace around diversity, equity, and inclusion trainings, where there's been a defensiveness around, well, we don't really need this, because what is diversity, equity, inclusion training other than reverse racism? And now that was an interesting kind of pushback. I actually hadn't, I've experienced that as a consultant in the space, but it's a tough challenge, and we had an HR professional share that. And then we had other stories shared about having differences of opinion, differences of values within one's own very close-knit family relationships, and how tough it's been when people have had to contend with a blood relative having very, very different views. And I was very proud of our group members for sharing how they have stepped up to challenge in a respectful way, in a loving way, but to try to challenge views and perspectives, and ask, well, why do you think this way about this group of people? Why are you making this generalization? Is there any data behind it? Is there any reason for you to really feel fearful or hateful or prejudiced? And to try to have those dialogues. And there was a real life confession that those conversations are hard to have, especially when you're having them with your blood relatives. And we closed on a slightly lighter note, but it is a serious note as well, that in the world of online dating right now, people seem to be much more bold and much more assertive, very openly from the outset, saying, I believe in Black Lives Matter, I believe in social justice, I believe in humans causing climate change, and wanting to say that right up front in their online dating profiles, so that they don't have to spend time and discover that later on, and then find disappointment. So we closed our discussion on a lighter note with that, and I thought that was really interesting. And why not? It's efficient. So, Mrs. Bailey, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, I'll speak about my group. One was the acceptance of COVID, and that you have to really understand it. And one person, well, if you've never been in a tornado, but you still believe there are tornadoes. So, this is something that maybe you've never seen it before, but this is real. But what I loved about the group was talking about, the fact that the basic values are love and respect of one another. That in Catholic school, you're taught to love your neighbor as yourself. And I mentioned that that's really difficult for me, because it should be a reversal. Love yourself as you love your neighbor. And one person did say that, yeah, you tend to give too much because you think you should give so much to the neighbor and not so much to yourself. And the fact that in America, we are very indulged no matter what level we're on. We all have enough. I mean, everybody really has enough. And there's clean water, there's hand sanitizer, there's masks, there's enough that we can protect ourselves and others. And that we should be very happy to do that. But there's a lot of fear about what will happen and about life in general. That was mentioned several times, that people are afraid of the unknown and they don't know how to cope with it and what to do with it. So I appreciate everybody in the group. And then Mala said, you know, everybody should be required to go to several different countries and see how other people live. And it should happen. It really should happen when kids are maybe 12 or 13 years old. So they can see that instead of just saying, well, we don't have this and we don't have that. You know, so it's wonderful, very enlightening to me. And I'll close with my statement. And I'll start with yesterday I received, yesterday, 2 days ago, I received an email that there wouldn't be soccer practice for my grandson because a child on the soccer team was tested positive for COVID. And the interesting thing about that is that the emails went around and it was a very carefully developed story. And it turned out that the parents had kept the child from practice when he felt ill. So the final story, and I was waiting to see if I had to be tested, was that he wasn't on the soccer field. He wasn't sick in the environment. They kept him away. And so this made me think about how things could be done in a very reasonable, rational, non-angry, non-blaming way so that we got to the end of the story and everyone was safe. But it disrupted what was looking like and beginning to feel like a little taste of life as it had been last fall. And I was resigned to the fact that this is happening, that this is our normal life through, even though it's temporary, but this is normal for now. The event and my being asked to speak on connecting the dots motivated me to brainstorm about the values that I place on being alive, being connected to others, being visible to others, being heard, and developing a group of diverse, supportive people who openly share without judgment or anger. In COVID time, we have to remain distant and at times isolated to protect our health and the health of others. Accepting the reality of quarantining, forced isolation for personal health and the health of others is just extremely difficult. It doesn't feel right, but feelings are not facts of science and health. In America, where personal freedom was won when we won the American Revolution, we take personal freedom very personally. But who does not want to be free and experience life as it was this time last year? I forced myself to accept the fact that this is life in COVID. Quarantining, isolating, wearing a mask over the mouth and nose, even if it's hot and some people cannot hear me when I talk. Social distancing, respect for the well-being of the health of myself and others. It's difficult to accept, and it's difficult for others to accept. I mean, I had a little bit of a battle with my grandson. I'm not going into the store because I'm not going to wear the mask. And I said, no, we're going to go into the store, you're going to wear the mask. And actually, some children have begun to say to people, you need to have your mask on. You need to protect my grandmother. That's what young children are seeing. Okay, masks are a fact. It's a scientific reality that wearing masks, washing hands, quarantining are necessary to protect our health. And there's a solution, that a vaccine will be a solution. Here's a fact, the polio vaccine has almost completely eradicated polio. So we don't in America even know that it still exists in the world. Most children in America don't know childhood illnesses like measles, mumps, and rubella, whooping cough. I think that people crave human interaction, and Zoom and FaceTime are sufficient but not personally satisfying. People are angry that they cannot freely socialize without wearing a mask. They are upset that they can't hug. Parades are canceled. For me, that's a big thing because I marched in the Coast Guard Auxiliary Band. I play cymbals. Every parade has been canceled. I go to Philadelphia for the Mummers Parade on January 1st. That's canceled. That's a reality. But I'm looking at, well, that's a reality now. But this is going to change. We just have to deal with certain realities. Kids are remote. Kids are on computers. That's really the way it is. And I value my freedom. I recognize and value the lives of others as well as mine. I'll wear a mask. I'll follow reasonable rules. And, you know, and I will isolate and I will protect myself. And if it's necessary to be tested before I'm with a group of people, I'll go out and I'll get a test to see, you know, to make sure that I'm safe. So it's a whole new reality that's difficult to deal with. But the bottom line is respect of others and being able to, you know, to be with people in some way. You know, I'm even learning how to do Zoom. Not real well, but I do it. So thank you very much.